Hello, hello, bonjour, mes amis, and gamers, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're not just reviewing a game, we're embarking on an expedition extraordinaire into the wonderful, weird world of Clair Obscure Expedition 33. I'm your host, Rudigs, the Maestro of Mayhem, and I'm absolutely ravi to be joined by two gaming titans, the creme de la creme of commentary, the one, the only maker of chaos, and the legend himself, a simply pwned gaming. Woo! Welcome, guys.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun, man.
Yeah. Now, for those who haven't yet dipped their croissants into the cafe au lait of Clair Obscura, it's a magnificent debut from our neighbors to the east and brilliant minds at Sandfall Interactive in that is not the right city, damn you AI. It is in France, Montpellier, I believe. They've concocted a gaming masterpiece and blended turn-based strategy with real-time action faster than you can say poutine. Well, we've all braved the bizarre from the humble beginnings to the epic endgame, and today we're spilling the beans, or should I say, le faves. So let's kick it off with those early hours in Act 1. Let's get into first impressions. How did you feel the voice actors, the caliber? How did that prologue grab you? Let's get into it. So we'll start with SPG and get his thoughts on how they presented the motivation to keep you engaged in playing in Act 1.
It's a quite interesting game, man. A whole lot of you are familiar with turn-based and from Final Fantasy, and to me, they did a little spin on it. I know that this has been implemented in some other titles. It's not the first time it was done, but an active dodge and parry. It literally changes the way you would normally do turn based. You're just hitting your buttons and you're waiting for it's your turn, and that's not the way this is. It's very interactive. So right off the bat, that punched me right in the face, and I love the feature. I think that it rounds out the turn based, so it's a little more action oriented, and it was really well done. As of the story, man, the story is absolutely fantastic. Basically, at its heart, Clair Obscure is basically all about grief and despair. You're introduced very early on to what is called the Paintress and an annual gomage. And what that is in this world, apparently, the Paintress paints a number, and when that number's up, basically everybody dies. And the motivation to start with is one a character you're close with in the very beginning, or they introduce you to that previously they're close. They get gomaged, and then you head off on an expedition and to find out what's going on with the paintress, to find out why these numbers are counting down, and there's been like 100 expeditions, and all these expeditions like they ended in failure. So like you're basically in the early game following in their footsteps and figuring out where they failed and how you're going to try to continue. um, it's really 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 well done and super interesting, but the focus is on grief and basically despair throughout most of the game. It's really well done, man. What did you think of the early hours?
Yes, and first of all, I want to give a shout out to Houston. Thanks for jumping onto the panel. We're just going over Act 1. So I want to say that instantly they bring you into a world that I will say is not visited very often, and that is France. I mean, how often can you say you're playing a game in France? So they got the Eiffel Tower in sorts in the way, but it's kind of obscured. So it brings you into that familiar place you want to explore, you want to learn more of. And secondary, the fact that everybody disappeared into these flowers means that it's not quite a death, it's a mystery, and you need to solve it. And it's something that you've, again, never seen before. This isn't like, oh, everyone just got like destroyed and dead. No, this is an age-based culling, and they turn into flowers. So instantly, like, these are all things you recognize, but put together, it's a grand mystery for you to solve. So I think they did a great job in hooking you in there. In addition, I will say the voice acting, putting Charlie Cox right as Gustav right in the beginning, you are almost what is it, starstruck almost. You're like, whoa, is that Daredevil? It catches onto your voice. Shadowheart, if you're a gamer, instantly catches onto your voice, and you're kind of swept away by the caliber of the voice acting. And I think that was a great job in motivating you to play the game as well. Houston, welcome to the panel, and wanted to get your thoughts on initial motivation in Act One. How did it feel? How did the game get you hooked into it? And just give us a little synopsis on how you felt there.
The way it got me, shit. Is the headset not working?
We hear you.
Am I coming through? Okay. Um, it hooked me on the fact of just in general, kind of the story of it, because it kind of felt like an original Final Fantasy kind of thing, and I've always been a big fan of those. The combat, I really liked it, and at first I didn't like the fact that they took away that you had default dodge and parry. So I like the fact it kept you engaged with that. It wasn't just you sitting back leisurely doing. You actually had to stay engaged with the combat and the turn system. The story itself, it was like, okay, I want to see what's going on. Why is this happening? What's the deal with the gourmage? You know, it it was all of that together that initially pulled me to the game wanting to do it, and then along with the visuals, the music motivated me with how in depth the character seemed, that there was more of a backstory to it than just, hey, welcome to the world, let's go do this. It was, you saw that there's actually, like, you're going to fight for something to save your future, to, be able to grow old with the people you want, including the one lady there in the beginning. I can't remember her name, but she was like, why do I want to bring a kid into this world that's just going to die young and not get to be with their parents? All these kids constantly getting orphaned each year. And you also had people that were like, they're our future. We still need to bring them in, even though they're going to have a short future. It was just that kind of deal brought me into it, because right out the gate, you felt high stakes in the fact of, you need to get to the end of this. You need to find out what's going on. You need to stop it. And that's what primarily drove me to it and wanting to see it.
Awesome. Great synopsis. Definitely a lot of high emotions. The stakes are there. And yeah, you want to save the future generations of humanity. So there is a lot at stake here. Maker, is that there? I see you with Switch the Deafen. Yeah, I wanted to get your perspective on Act One. You know, grabbing a gamer in that first 20 minutes is the most impossible thing to do these days. Why do you think that Sandfall succeeded here?
Um, I think they did like it gave you an intrigue of like I was more intrigued in the world itself, like what is this like being that is causing the gamage. Um, I guess I kind of knew where it was headed free from like the beginning. They're like because they implied like this is the last time that you're going to like see her. Like everyone's like there's like people doom and gloom, and I'm like there's gonna be like a mass calling or like uh I kind of could see that this was coming. um, it's just I do like that they made it more of like a festival, more of like a celebration, a send off, um, and I like that aspect, and I like the world itself, and it kind of like grabbed me in that aspect, um, and made me interested to see what's gonna happen next.
Yeah, absolutely. It is crazy how they did it. Even here we see in the cutscene here, the flowers are everywhere. They even keep the flowers from last year's Gomage, which, how do flowers maintain their buoyancy after a year? Must be a crazy world. But moving on to Act 1, you go into the expedition. And I want to touch on different parts of the expedition in Act One here with each of you here. So, SPG, what did you feel when you first met the man in the white cape?
Okay, so I was thrown off in a few different ways. Rudigs explained to me that all French people look alike, so that's why I was a little confused. I thought, I thought the guy on the beach, the old man that like messes up your journey in the beginning. I thought that might have been an elder Gustav. I was very wrong. You meet another character in a different act named Verso, and I was confused. I thought, all these people may be the same person. I was absolutely wrong. But anyway, um, the story, like in the first act, it really does capture universal loss. Gustav loses a loved one right off the bat, which pulls at your heartstrings. As soon as you hit the beach, there's death and mayhem, and you lose like a whole bunch of your team. Uh, like the grief is like intimate and cosmic as you go, and it does draw you in and keep pulling you further. I feel like I'm not answering your question though, Rudigs. What was the question?
How did you? No worries. It's you're setting the atmosphere. It's definitely filled with that. But how did you feel when you first landed ashore, thinking you were going to go on an expedition with all of your party, which was absolutely massive, and then you were just met with another human, which completely bends the laws of this world, who's old, and then he just starts murdering you with magic. Like,
Yeah. So for lore wise, nobody's supposed to grow old. So when you hit the beach and you get introduced to this character, you're like, he shouldn't even exist, as Rudigs was just alluding to, and he's so OP. Like everyone, almost everyone dies instantly. It is a shock, I think, and all these things added together make you want to keep going to experience the story even more. And as I said, as you go, I was thrown off by many things. So I really like the motivation that they baked in to Act One, and the realization that you're not alone in this world, so to speak. Like there's other stuff going on, and just the way they kind of tie that in um, to like the cosmology of the world that they create is really, really, really cool. Um, I really uh, I really liked the hand drawn like animations that they do for the attacks and stuff. I really thought they did well early game for giving you ways to expand your character and make him feel more powerful. And as you learn the systems, because in Act One they teach you a whole bunch of systems, and they continue to teach them to you all the way into Act Two. So quite robust there.
Absolutely. Now, continuing along Act One, Houston, how did you feel about Gustav and his addition? Why do you think the developers added Gustav and his story importance there? And be free to spoil anything. There's a spoiler alert on the stream.
I would have to say um, that it was at first it was okay. This is your main character. Okay, you know, you meet the gray haired man, and you're like, what the hell? And of course, like SPG, I'm sitting there thinking like, wait, is that an older Gustav? What the hell's going on here? So confusion and stuff. And then as it goes, you find out that it's, you know, that's not Gustav. And then when you lose him, you know, like all of us, it was what the hell? You just killed the main character. Wait, what? Hold on. What's going on here? And then as you get a little deeper, you find out it's he's put there, you get attached to him, you get invested in him, and you lose him. It's just more adding to teaching you of grief and so forth and so on, and it shows, you know, the further lesson that it's everyone in there's dealing with grief in a different way, but yet at the same time, you're in the back of your mind, you're still like, why'd you take this character away from me? I was invested in this character. I put stuff into it. What the hell? So a part of you is frustrated, but at the same time, it's teaching, grief and how to deal with it. And at the same time, I'd still much rather have Gustav than Verso, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree to that. And
Those who come
it
after.
that yeah, you got used to what he was saying at this, his mentality and everything in it. And it still wanted me to see the game through and everything. It didn't put me off, but it was like, why? Why'd you do this? Y'all writers got some big balls, but why'd you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a bold move. I can't think of another game where they've taken the main character and just destroyed him after getting you so emotionally invested in him. It was absolutely a bold move, and they kept continuing to make bold moves like that in Act Two, and we'll get that down to that as well. But Maker, I wanted to get your perspective on what you thought of Mayel's transformation, her becoming the forefront character. Did you see that coming in the beginning of Act One? And how did you feel about the transition of protagonists? Did it work for you? Were you excited to play Act Two?
Um,
And feel free to try to answer
I
any of those.
yeah, I kind of saw clues towards it. I didn't think that they were gonna kill off Gustav per se, like until I would say until Wilson kind of hinted at it accidentally. He's like, "There's a mission for Gustav. You might want to do that before beating Act One." And I'm like, oh, I'm like, he's gonna die, isn't he? It was my first reaction to that. But yeah, no, there's like hints like in all in Act One where like the campfire scene where Mael it like freezes time and like only she is able to see the people. I was like, okay, it's lining her up to be like either like the main focus or the because she has something no one else does. Everyone else feels normal. Um, I guess normal as can be in this world, but her she's special. They mark her as special. There's going to be something happening with her, and you do see that as the especially by the end of Act Two, you you realize that she's very very special and key to the whole plot.
Absolutely. I would say Act Two is definitely where the story really picks up. And in my opinion, this is going to be the hot take of the review. I think the game, story wise, should have ended at the end of Act Two. I feel like defeating the Paintress
Agreed.
should have been the end of the game, and they saved the Gamage and all the people. I did not like the meta twist that it took in Act Two. So we'll continue the story. You're obviously in Act Two now, and you continue this expedition. You find out lots about all the other characters. Want to get each person's perspective on your favorite side character to use and why. I, for instance, will start off with CL. Definitely was first to use her. I thought she was really, you know what? It was just all the different mechanics. The card one was the easiest for me to understand. Stack cards, do damage with the opposite. Switch to Twilight, do more damage. Flip it to somebody else, double their damage. It was simple for me to understand, and that's why I stuck with it. I really took CL to the end with me, even to my final build. So that would be my highlighted character selection of those. SPG, who is your favorite character other than Mael to put in your party?
Verso, that's probably a hot take as well. But I put and invested so much time into Gustav that I wasn't willing to let Gustav go. I was unwilling to deal with the grief of the loss of that character, so I continued using Verso, because a lot of the stuff that you build up in Gustav transfers to the Verso character. So I I used Verso, man. But it plays into the overall story, which is super interesting.
Absolutely. Houston, who was your favorite supplementary character?
I was a little late to the party with him, but once I started understanding him and getting his abilities, it was Minoko. Minoko for me was game breaking to a point. Once you started to get his abilities, you understood how to put this ability with that one, knowing that it rotates the mask wheel 3 spaces into this mask, and it was okay, cool. Now I go into this ability for the next turn, and then it's this one rotates it so much, so I'm putting this ability, which is a heavy hitting ability, and it just got to the point where it was, if I want to break them, I can break them. If I want to stun them, I can stun them. He was so versatile once you got his abilities unlocked to a point that it was hard for me not to have him in there, even though Luna, in my opinion, is pretty OP to an extent as well. But it was Minoko was my MVP without a doubt.
Oh yeah, I ran the monkey pimp lineup for a while, where you'd have Minoko, Mael, and CL. But I want to get Maker's opinion on here. What was your favorite sub character to bring into your lineup?
Like I don't know if I would consider like Verso particular like a sub character just because he's so integral to the plot. Um, but like Verso to me was just so good. Like there was I think it's like Phantom of Stars ability that it did a ton of like it can break and does break a ton of break damage. That once I unlocked that ability, it was like godlike. Especially when I eventually found a weapon that automatically started him in S stance, so it only costed like five. I think it's costed five to cast it, and instead of nine, and so yeah, it just uh, he was super strong. But I really like Minoko. I put him in mind just because it reminded me of Final Fantasy VI. There was a character in Final Fantasy VI that has an ability where it mimics the attacks of, or it learns the attacks of the enemies. Used to, whenever you encountered an enemy, you could send it with that enemy to learn its moves, and then the next time you ran into that enemy and defeated it, he would jump back into your party and then have that new ability. So it reminded me of that, and I really like that.
You know the designer of Minoko had a foot fetish, though, right? Why else was he collecting feet?
He collecting feet, yeah.
Yeah,
It's toothpick feet. They point that out. Why are all the feet pointed?
yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But that was a funny little add-on there. I definitely think, I don't know why Final Fantasy let go of that aspect. I think it worked really well here. I was watching a short that said Final Fantasy stopped letting you control animals as part of your party before Final Fantasy X. So I think there's a lot of things in this game that it just brought a lot of nostalgia back to those people who enjoyed those games and really
I, I
tunneled in those gamers.
I do think there was a lot of creativity with the some of the earlier Final Fantasies that you really don't see as much today. And I do wish that they would maybe go back to the drawing board with turn based and change some of those things.
I attribute that to the shroom shakes no longer being sold in Japan.
Darn.
You didn't have any of those while you were there, did you, Maker?
No, they stopped it after.
Yeah, they stopped it at
I
the
didn't even know they
Olympics.
were off.
Yeah.
I did not know that those even existed. So
Well, getting into Act 2, I want to jump into one of my favorite parts is you finally confront the Paintress. I want to get everyone's perspective here because in my perspective, like I said, the game should have ended there. I did not like the meta twist the game took where now you are aka Super Mario jumping into a painting and solving this painting's issue. I thought it took away from the aspect. I don't quite understand why 33 was even a thing at this point. They were just wiping people to what, entertain Verso for a little bit, and create this mystery for him. I'm not too sure. I feel like more should have been fleshed out there, and I just dislike that they threw away that story string or just didn't really explain it enough for me to be impacted. So I want to get everyone's perspective on how they felt with the Paintress. This is obviously a very pivotal moment where you learn all about the world and what's going on. SPG, jump into your perspective. How did you feel with this development in the story?
Okay, so one thing is for sure. My wife was heading up to bed, and I was at the end of Act 2, and I said, let me go ahead and beat this game real quick. Okay? And I made it all the way to the dock and went, what? There's more? Are you? It felt like an ending, didn't it, Rudix? All the way up
Absolutely.
to where, yeah, all the way up to where the catastrophic thing happens and the gomage takes everyone, no matter what. So here's the deal, man. Um, I think story-wise, it was fantastic. I think that it's a deep cut into the grief system that they baked into the game, and it's really interesting. But from somebody who was enamored with the world and wanted to solve the mysteries of said world and cared about the characters within the world, feel cheated. I can understand if you feel cheated at this moment because you're in a painting. None of this stuff is actually taking place. So let me go ahead and break it down and spoil it for you. What you figure out at the end of the second act is that Mayel is not Mayel. Mayel is actually Alicia, a girl named Alicia. And she had a brother named Verso. She's got a mom and dad and another sister. And anyway, a accident happened or something took place and there was a fire. And it horribly scarred Alicia to where it messed her face up and stole her voice box from her. So she can't even talk. And Verso saved her, but died. He fell trying to save her from the fire. So this family that lives in France, um, they are in mourning for a son, for a brother, and in this world, paintings can be magical. So, like, it's almost like creating a matrix in a sense, if you can wrap your mind around that. So, Verso, before he died, he made this painting, and he made all these characters. And because of this family's grief, instead of dealing with, the loss and the pain that was in front of them, the mother injects herself into the painting, and she does it to get away from the grief and to experience Verso again, or a version of him, what's left of him, what's left of his essence. And she goes into the painting and loses herself. She's the paintress. The guy on the beach that you meet in the very beginning that messes everyone up with just a few sword swings, that is Papa. That is Verso's dad. And he goes into the painting to try to get his wife back because she's going to spend so much time in the painting, she's going to end up dying. Anyway, to make a long story short, Alicia goes into the painting to try to get her mom and dad and to try to deal with this grief. When she injects herself into the painting, she gets painted over. She gets painted over anew as Mayel. She's warned in the cutscene that she's going to be painted over if she doesn't concentrate, and she gets painted over as Mayel. And what's super interesting about the grief and the despair, you follow all of these expeditions all the way to where they fall, and for those that come after, they're all trying to make it to the paintress. And anyway, Mael, she's given a brother, a surrogate brother, Gustav. And at the end of the first act, you lose Gustav. So at the end of the first act, the developers are teaching you about loss, and you're also, Mael is learning loss, grief, and trying to get over it as she's going through the motions of this story. And Anyway, you defeat the paintress and you go back and you're having this big celebration and you're telling everyone Gustav misses you. Sorry, he didn't make it back, but I saved you all. And then you find out that the paintress wasn't the villain or wasn't what was even causing the gommage. And then a mass gommage happens and it takes everyone. Now, the game continues on, but for people like Rudigs and things like that, may not have been as invested in the story or didn't quite understand the shift that takes place, uh, the world still does matter in a sense, but it doesn't matter in the literal sense that you're changing things for the good or the bad. Um, so a lot of people may lose motivation at that point. It motivated me to figure out more. And there's a problem with the third act we'll get to later, but there's a lot of context that you end up learning in the third act. But right after the second act, you can go directly to the end of the game if you want. I think I've talked enough. There you go, Rue. Sorry about that.
No worries. No, it's a good synopsis over everything, and sort of that the echoing theme is more than just the story. It's the emotion of grief, and I think they teach you that in many ways there. Houston, how did you feel about the ending? Maybe you understood more parts about it than I did. I call it the ending. It was the end of Act Two, where the paintress no longer does the 33. The gommage is no longer a thing, and the game continues down a different story path. How did you feel they handled that?
At first, yeah, I I kind of knew there was more to it because SPG was like, wait till you see the end of Act Two, another fucking mind blowing. What the fuck? That's all I'm gonna say. And I was like, okay, so we're gonna get another shocker like the first. I wasn't expecting that. That that was a complete take my knees out from underneath me, punch me in the gut. Like, wait, what? Because that was an ending. You beat the paintress and all of that. And at first, yeah, when I like referring to to as the snap because that's what it makes me think of. All of a sudden, Verso's reading the letter, get your mind rolling again. Like, wait, what? Huh? And then there it happens. The boom, the big gourmage. Here it comes through, and it starts wiping everybody out. And I'm sitting here like, wait, what's going on? And then you see that next scene where it goes back, and it's Alicia, and you find it out that it's okay. Yeah, it's all in a painting. The mother went in there, and then it starts pointing out the context to it. And to touch base on USPG, gray-haired man on the beach wasn't actually the real papa, like we all thought at first. Um, because it states
Mr. Stranger.
when you're in there talking um, with Alicia's sister Claire, please, or whatever, how her name's pronounced. Um, and then you understand more the numbers that she's been in the painting so long, she's getting weaker. Her painting powers are getting weaker, and the chroma, which is paint, it's getting weaker. So her writing the number down, it's her saving anyone under that is who she can save because as it's said in that context with Alicia and her sister, that her power is getting limited, and so she's only to save his newest creations, not his oldest. And that was the marking for the time frame going down. It was any creation under that she can save. She can't protect the older ones. She's not strong enough anymore. And all that, then all the pieces start coming together. And her papa, which you find out later on is actually the curator, is the reason why he kept motivating her to do it, was helping her. Like when they first hit the island, and she talked about like, we've been training. Oh, it's not going to go so easy this time. Do we have to train again? That was her papa making her stronger to actually beat her mother, because her papa wanted his wife out of the painting. He wanted just to destroy the painting, be done with it, rip the band-aid. General male mentality when it comes to stuff. Rip the band-aid, get it over with, bitch about it, yell about it, scream about it, get over it. Whereas kind of the more generic deal when it comes to the feminine side of it is like grieve, work through our emotions. But Mama's gotten trapped in the emotions of it. She doesn't want to let the painting go. She doesn't want to let her son go. So she has a painted family in there. That's where Verso is, the painted version of her husband, which is there to protect anyone coming to stop her. And knowing that, then it's like, okay, well, what's the deeper lying context here? Even though I feel the ending of the game's already done. So a part of me still wants to go, while the other half of me is like, wait, we just saw the ending. We won. It's over. Hoorah. We beat the villain. It's good. But then you find that next layer level to it. And then of course in Act 3, then it's okay, now you're going to actually stop the true person trying to destroy the painting that was killing everybody, but it's it all rolls back to grief, and each person's grieving in their own way. And if you did find the section, which I don't know if you went to it, Rue, I think you might have overheard me. Um, no, I think you did go there. Telling David, after when you start Act 3, make sure to go to this one place. It'll add more context to the story. And you go and see Alicia's sister and find out that she's been a part of it, that she's drained in there. She's lost herself in the painting just because of being in there so long. But it did crush me at a point of like, I really don't want to play no more. But the other side of me was like, I want to see this story all the way through. What are y'all hiding?
Oh, well, I think that was a great explanation, especially if people didn't understand, like me, those fine details of why the numbers and her power and the double families that were constantly going on. Like, let's face it, it was in French. It was going to be confusing if it wasn't your first language. So there. Now, I'm not saying in the literal
Get your
sense.
baguette and hold on.
Yeah, but there was some confusing aspects to it. Now, Maker, I want to grab your perspective if I can. How did you feel at the end of Act 2? Storytelling wise, did it motivate you to finish Act 3, or was it just us also beating it that motivated you?
I mean, I wanted to see the end, and I wanted to see like the reasonings behind everything. Um, and I think like the issue I more so have is like once you find out, like it reveals that it's all like a creation, then it makes like it moot, especially with one ending, like or like all these characters, like it then made me not want to care about them because I know that they're not real type deal. um because to me it's like these are just figments, they're fragments of someone's like thoughts. It's not like necessarily a real thing. um and then that to me takes away from, I guess, who they are as a person, because they're not, as in we're not real.
Yeah, the
um,
stakes are dropped a little bit when you're
yeah,
like, oh, okay, well, this is all inside a painting.
yeah, and and it kills the relationship system to me because I'm like, why am I building up this relationship if they're basically not going to exist or they don't exist? I did like the inner politics between, I guess, the like the dad is trying to stop the mom to get her out of the painting. And so like, yeah, as Houston said, he was the curator, and he was helping them to try and stop their mom. And that's why he became the bad guy in Act 3, to get her out of the painting as well. And it is all about grief and is about like getting past that. I almost feel like they went into it a little too much. Um, I also think that like some of the side content, story wise, is uh, I hate that some of it's locked behind such hard difficulty, or a lot of the side content is makes, I would say, makes the ending even worse. At least for me, because by the time you do learn this context and beat these harder things and then go back to the main ending, you beat the boss so fast that you don't get the full like bit, because I watched someone beat it and they were playing it fairly early after beating Act 2, and I didn't realize there was dialogue in the middle of that fight. I'd got none of it because I like two shot the boss. Um, and so it actually pissed me off that I missed like like story beats because I beat the game too fast. Um, and it just feels so poorly designed in that way. Um, and, and it's just frustrating.
Yeah, the balancing that you're alluding to in Act 3 was definitely broken. I'm not sure why they didn't do a variable adjustment for the boss. You know, put him 5 levels ahead of where you are now. It seems like they locked the boss into like a level 60, and he was level 60 no matter what you did when you went in there or not. You could go in at level 75 and just one shot him, and that was it. So I do agree with you. They took away from that final boss fight and the story beats in Act 3 with the balancing.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the small things that they did, like putting the word danger outside of areas you weren't necessarily leveled to do, and there is a fine balance between throwing a number level on every enemy you meet and making it a immersive experience, and I feel like they had to walk that line. I would have liked to see something like you said in Elden Ring we discussed, where you have certain sections of the map that are more geared towards your level. They tried to do that in ways where SK allowed you access to certain areas, but even off the bat, you're put to the left of you a danger cave, and you go in, and there's this pink fluff ball that just murders you if you try to do it right away. And so
Yeah.
I think they were trying to make something different, but at the same time, people need a bit more guidance than just one word called danger. Um,
Yeah.
and
I guess it's different if it's a signifier of like this is a dangerous area, like and there's a section, but like there'd be like a cave right near it that you could still go in and complete perfectly fine, but then that one that just says danger, or even sometimes you just go into an area that won't be labeled danger and they'd still like kick your butt, and it's just like so. And I wished I had known off the bat that it's probably best to just run straight through the main story, and I probably would have had a better experience if I just went straight through the main story and then did the side content afterwards. um and I guess that's my biggest complaint is like it doesn't it feels like it's so geared that way.
yeah, it's like do all the content you can in Act 1 before you finish Act 1, but then just race through Act 2 and Act 3. I think that's story-wise, that's the way to play it. And then side content and end game afterwards.
Like, well, I mean, even in Act One, there is some of that stuff that feels too difficult to even complete. But then there's like a ton of side content that you can access in Act Two that is clearly meant, like, was it like Prong or whatever? Is like you can run into him in Act Two, and he's like, I hit him once and saw the health barely drop, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right. And I know I was near the end of Act Two, so like, yeah, it doesn't like at least like lock them off behind like a flying. I know they did that for some of the side content, but it just felt like poorly designed, and I didn't like that.
Yeah. It's definitely tough. SPG, I want to get your thoughts. What did you think on balancing in Act 3? Where did they go wrong? Um, and and is it really the weakest part of this game, like I'm saying here?
It for sure is the weakest part of the game. The third act is, like I said, a whole lot of people will lose motivation. Like Maker was saying, that these people are make believe. They're fictitious. Even if Verso is just a little chunk of the real Verso's soul, or there's still just a little piece of him still alive in the painting, it doesn't matter. It's fake. people can lose motivation. But in the third act, man, the balancing falls off a cliff. Um, it really does. Now, the game was built with the intention of you having these builds and breaking their system and doing a whole bunch of damage and all that stuff. And I completely understand. But as soon as you're given the reins after the second act and they're like, here, go, you can go fight Papa, or now you can fly and there's a whole world left to explore. You go to explore that world and you start smacking your face against a brick wall. The challenge is so difficult, man. And I can parry and I can dodge, and I was doing a lot of damage, but I got to level 68 and I was climbing the tower, and I could not beat it. I couldn't. I would have to have a perfect run where they didn't touch me. And they have you can mimic, or you can memorize their attacks by sound for some of them, and others you can just watch their animations, much like a Dark Souls game. The issue is that they have 2 to 3 different animations, and you have to really be paying attention. Oh, are they going to do that slight delay this time, or are they just going to hit you? And it was so frustrating, man. So many people might get to the third act and just stop playing. I think that's possible. They did a good job early game and all that stuff. If you were like 5 levels above where they wanted you to be, you don't really have any real issue if you know the systems and how to finesse them a little bit. But going into the end game, man, it was incredibly difficult. I don't know too many people who are going to suffer through that. I mean, we did here, but I didn't suffer as much as all of you guys because I cheated. I made myself level 99 thinking, hey, man, that's going to do it. Once I'm level 99, there's nothing's going to stop me from getting through these areas. Wrong. It's not even balanced for a level 99 player. Now, if you're using all them, their systems, and you're, finessing it or cheesing it a little bit, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. There's lumens and lumen points and pictos. It's just one of the mechanics. It gives you buffs for your characters, and then you can share those with the other characters. And by the end, you can have a broken build very easily. But I didn't do that. I just played it like a regular Final Fantasy game with parry. And I have to say, from that standpoint, all the way to the third act where I was, where I came up against that brick wall, I absolutely love the game, man. I don't know if we're giving scores at the end or not, but I'm going to give it a score, and the only thing that brings it down is the third act, is that running into that brick wall. I love the story. I thought it was a triumph in storytelling for, the way they get you so invested in this world. Oh, the Gomage. Oh, the Paintress. What is going on? All these expeditions. Oh, they failed. They died. Shit, I'm going to succeed where they failed. And you just, one twist after another. It was just very satisfying from a storyteller's standpoint. They took some bold risks and some big moves, and coming from old Ubisoft developers, I have to say, man, they did knock this one out of the park in my mind. But things do fall apart quite quickly in the third act.
I did want to point something out, like that brick wall, where you said like you basically have to like break the game. There's definitely some things that are even like story elements that are straight up just brick walls. Like Simon is one for that comes to mind, because I basically had to break the game to beat it, because even if I did get him down to 30% health, he would wipe your entire team, which is awful of a mechanic when you've got a game designed where you create your team and then you just have a mechanic that kills them all outright. Like no, like there's no countering it. Like you just wipes you out. There's no
Yeah.
ability to dodge.
I
It's
watched this.
dumb.
I watched the strat on that. So you're supposed to start with your 2 not so good characters, knowing that they're going to get wiped, so you can bring in your other 3. But yeah, I
It's
get.
not a fun
I
mechanic.
I had to break the
It's
game. I ran up against a wall like SPG in the end game, where I was like, okay, well, my brain alone isn't going to be able to finesse this into a win for me. So the Gomage looks uber powerful. How do I build that ASAP? So I just looked at building my Gomage before they could even attack, and then bingo bango, everybody was dead in front of me.
other than that, I do think like the combat is fantastic, but yeah, those were my like my biggest complaints with the game. That and parkour. You know, I thought all the parkour elements that they had was awful. It felt like they shouldn't even been in the game.
Houston, I want to get your perspective on endgame content. Do you think that it was properly balanced? Do you think Simon and Clea should have been part of the regular story, like Wilson's saying in the chat here, or do you think that was kept to endgame for a reason?
I think Simon being a hidden boss, which me and SPG have talked about it, that's the real end game, dude. You want to fight, you go fight Simon. Clea, I believe that she should have been pointed out as a spot to go, as a point of interest. I really think she should have. And I didn't want to do a new game plus, and my mentality in these games um, is to always balance leveling out all of my characters. You know, never let any one of them get far ahead. Constantly keep them up. Keep them polished out and stuff. So yeah, the fight under the monolith there, that one did catch me off guard. But at the same time, because of how I play the games, it was like, okay, bringing in the B string. Not a problem. We can do this. Just don't screw up. Don't miss a parry. Don't miss a dodge. Um, but also to the other point was with, like you said, the scaling of the end of the game. I wish they would have done something else with that, because I wanted to do everything before that. I fought for what, 5, 6 hours to climb that tower, smashing my head against the wall. You know, that's like one of those montage arcs where you have the hero, he's hitting the gym, he's running, he's doing all of this. Rocky's punching the steaks, the cows, and the meat freezer coming out stronger. After I came out of there, yeah, I'm just decimating everything, destroying it, except for under the monolith. That was a fight. But I finished all of that. Then I went to the end game, and it was just one attack. Yeah, wiped all this out. One attack, wiped that out. 2, 3 attacks. There it is. We're watching the end of the game and stuff. So yeah, that balancing was not copacetic and flowing in there. Um, yes, they do have the option that for the new game plus, which was really weird, never seen it, but I do kind of like it. You have to be in the game to do new game plus. Um, and if you reload your continue file after you beat the game, you start before that fight. So, you could turn around, go back out into the world and do the other stuff and not miss it. You've just already seen the end of the game. So,
Now
but
they did
that's not really
update that.
explained.
They did update that because when I finished the game, they load you in. So you can still go back into the world, but you can't redo the fight. So you're stuck with your one ending, no matter what.
Okay, so they've changed it now to where you're locked to the one and you'd have to beat it again to see the second one.
Yes.
Yeah, a big mistake was Simon. Simon gives so much context to Expedition Zero, and I think that I don't know how they could have put that in the main game. My understanding was of the new game plus is that that's probably where the developers figured you would do all this third act stuff, is on your second run with your characters at 99 and all the Luma points that you could possibly get for all your extra pictos and all that stuff. But I was wrong. When you go to new game plus, it adjusts. It's rebalanced for you being max level. Um, so I don't know, man. I think a whole lot of people are going to miss a whole lot of context to the overall story, being that it's such a hard climb to achieve the context. Simon is great context. Claire is great context, or whatever her name is, but the older sister. But it's just so hard to get to those areas and to actually get that context. Um, but as Maker said, if you if you climb that mountain or you get your head through that brick wall, finally you'll go to the end boss and you'll one shot him. Like, it's supposed to be a multi-tiered fight with
Yep.
multiple modes, just like, you know, a lot of Dark Souls fights are. They have 2 tiers or more, and you go in there and do one hit, and you just do one animation, and it's over. The fight's over. Go to the second part, one animation, the fight's over. So they definitely missed the mark on the balancing in the third act for sure, man. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're the fact that you're given the free reins, and like you said, it's you're thrown off a cliff on all of these other ones. But to some of us gamers, we're going to keep trying at that to get to that and then screw us out of that ending. Whereas if we would have just done point A to point B to point C to point D, we would have enjoyed all that context. But they still should have had a side marker for at least CL.
I don't know if
They
any
don't
of
even.
you I don't know if any of you have ever climbed a mountain in Skyrim. You can take a path that takes you right to where you're going, or you can jump like an idiot for a whole bunch and try to jump there. That's what
Yeah.
I do. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So speaking to that, like I think that's the scaling is really the issue because by the time you're like 99 or like even like not even 99, like in the 80s, you will be doing millions of damage. That is the problem. If they, drop the scaling down to where, yeah, I guess you're doing less damage and you maybe less of these combos, like have require one instead of the other type of deal. You potentially you could and lower the health of some of these later end game bosses, then you won't be doing so much damage on the final boss and you can actually have it be multiple turns to beat the boss.
Yeah, it's all these wild multipliers, right? Because if you time something by 200%, then you multiply it again by 2, and then you're already doing so much, and it's already a critical multiplier, and you gotta like it was too many systems, and the scaling just went out of control. You could make it just go
Well,
bonanza.
even if you compare it back to being a completionist on like Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII, that final encounter with Sephiroth at the end, it was still a
Hours.
relatively challenging fight. Even it didn't matter whether you were level 50 or you were max level and stuff, which, yeah, you understood certain spells in this better, but it was still a challenging fight. It wasn't you walked up to Sephiroth and like, what up? Dropped a lightning bolt on him and just cooked him to ash. And it's like, all right, roll credits. Let's get out of here.
Well, we are at the hour, and there's still 3 things I want to get through, so bear with me here. So I'm going to start with music. I want to get everyone's opinions on this guy from SoundCloud, a music teacher who just got picked up, and they went with it 250 tracks later. Then we're going to jump into which ending did you pick? And lastly, I want to end off with my favorite character, SK. So those are going to be our 3 ending topics here. Want to get into Music Maker. How'd you feel about the music? Do you think it'll win Best Music of the Year? I mean, there was some pretty great lo-fi, French-infused, great music in this. I definitely think it was
Um,
on par with some of the best music in gaming.
yeah, I definitely think it has potential to win. I don't know if it will, just because to me, like Death Stranding, the original Death Stranding, the things that it was really good with was its soundtrack, and I think Death Stranding 2 has a good shot of also making it up there. Um, but it's gonna be a close one. Like it's definitely in the runnings. It's easily I would put it um, akin to Stellar Blade. It had a really good soundtrack, and I think it has potential to win. Just as long as there's not like a Final Fantasy soundtrack, those always tend to win.
Those are pretty good. All right, Houston, how'd you feel about the music? Did it go right up your alley? What were your thoughts?
Music to me was out of the park, a 10 out of 10, especially with the way some people probably didn't notice it, but in the battles, the music itself would ramp up and they would actually have it set to where as it came. to the end of the battle, the music would actually calm back down. So it'd have an apex to it. And this, it wasn't just it's blasting a track and then all of a sudden, okay, cut this other track in. It was fluent movement through it. That the passion and the energy for it, in my opinion, was amazing. I feel it should win. Yeah, we still got a good bit of the year left of what comes out. Extremely blown away considering it the fact that this is a guy's first time ever scoring a game, and that they pulled him off of Facebook. He submitted a track and they pulled him off of Facebook and started composing, bringing people in to help him achieve what he wanted to with it. Like, to me, the soundtrack phenomenal. I actually find myself at times when I'm doing stuff around the house, I actually have the soundtrack queued up on Spotify playing because I like it so much.
Nice, nice. And SPG, I'll get your thoughts on the music.
Really good, man. What a triumph for that guy to come out of nowhere and do such a great job. It will be nominated for Game of the Year probably, and for music. But will it win? I don't know. But I think it's got the nom, and it probably deserves it.
Absolutely. We'll get into everyone's ending they picked. I was not a big fan of Verso throughout the whole thing. Kind of think he was a bit of a bitch. But that was just my perspective on the story. Obviously, there was a lot of emotions. I'm just joking around. But I picked Mayel to end it because I wanted to live forever in this painting, or else what was all the goddamn point of doing all that work? But that ending was horrifying. You end up aging with Verso, and he is in a terrible state. He looks like he regrets everything he's ever done. He plays the piano. At least everyone's still alive, though, so everybody's happy that you did save in the world. But then it turns that Mayel is far gone, looks very painted over, and it ends with Verso saying, let me die, screaming into the air, which is absolutely traumatizing. So that was the ending I got. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I definitely understand why the other one was more of a complete ending, although both, in my opinion, were very sad. So we'll jump to Maker. Which ending did you pick?
I picked the one, letting Verso and his creations, die with him. I mean, to me, that's kind of what the whole thing was about. I did wrestle with it because part of me I wished that world could live on, that there was some way to keep his, his creations to continue to live on. Because I think in a part, like what someone does, it does live on. But I don't know. I don't know the exact. I think that's one of the things that I wish it did more, was explain the world outside. Like, are they able to keep that painting going? As as it is his creation, and just leave it in existence. I know there's the temptations to do the things, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it is best to let go and move on, and that's the key thing.
Yeah, but there goes all your work. Just got erased. Anyways, I'll digest that. Houston, did you pick both endings? Because I see you beat it twice. Or
Yes.
did you pick Verso both
I
times?
No, I struggled with it the first time. I bounced between them and all of that. And my first ending I picked was my L, and then into it I realized, like, oh, this was a poor decision. But I was invested in the character. I liked her as a character, all of that, her passion, the fact that, you know, she wanted to spend a little more time there. She wanted to save that world. She wanted that painting to survive. And that was ultimately that led to it. And then when you see it, they show her face. Verso looks up and they show her face, and it has the paint running on it, kind of basically describing that she's now been corrupted by the painting. She's kind of trapped in it and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I did the wrong one. And, to me, the better ending of the two, because you have a bad ending, good ending, however people want to word it. It's definitely picking Verso is what is a proper ending to that, because it's bringing all that grieving and the family back together, truly being there for each other, and which how it should be in life. You have a loss, it's your family and friends coming together to help you through it and stuff, not leaving you alone and you sitting in a dark house, windows shut up, and just in the dark, just grieving over it for months and months and months. It's having your family and friends there to help you through it. But yeah, I picked my L first. That was my first go, and it was like, damn, I should have picked the other.
Yeah, I hear that. And SPG, what'd you think of the ending? Which one did you gravitate towards?
I think there's only one ending. I don't know why anyone, if you understood the story, would pick Mael. I just don't. Because, look, it basically comes down to this: the whole game is about despair, loss, and grief. And you can continue to hide from your own feelings and to live in a pretend world, but other people around you will continue to suffer. It's best to move on. It's a beautiful story, man. And I picked Verso because that family deserved to get out of the painting and to move on with whatever life they had left. Because the ones around you are what are most important. And I get why people wouldn't want to give up on that world, but the world was fake. And at the end, Mayel's ending, in my opinion, she became the paintress herself, and everyone was her puppets. Everyone was.
Yep.
And, for somebody that's going through that extreme grief, I can completely understand escapism. I really can. But at some point, you do have to suck it up and, deal with it. And it's not easy. It's very rough. And I really love the thought, care, and the thought-provoking things that are injected into this story. I fancy myself a small storyteller, and I just think that they really went above and beyond the Call of Duty on the story itself. It's a
Agreed.
tight 25 or 30 hours of gameplay, way more if you want to climb those mountains. But for anyone that watches this and decides to play it later or whatever, I would definitely rush through the main story, is what I would do. Because all that side content is really cool, but it's very frustrating, and it kind of ruins the end fight if you do it that way. But I picked Verso, and I think all you should too, is what I'm saying.
Well, I think it was Sven Winkel who called it out, the CEO of Larian Studios. When he did a speech at the Game of the Year Awards, he said he's already seen the Game of the Year for this year, and it's a game that just made a game because they thought it was fun. They didn't put crazy marketing dollars. They didn't do it to address a certain group of people. They just made a game because they wanted to make a fun game that they would play themselves. And I think when it comes down to it, it was a very small team. It was a passion project. And the end of the day, they came out with a great product. And I think it shows that when you make a game by gamers for gamers, it's a different product than a marketing tool to extract as much money as they can from you.
Like you said right there, Rue. Because I'd mentioned this to SPG. I'm like, dude, I'm on the fence on buying this game for Steam, just because I feel I'm stealing from them playing it on Game Pass. And I ultimately did buy it on Steam because I'm like, they deserve the money for this game. It's a work of art in my opinion. We haven't had a game like, well, a game hasn't hit me like this since the original Final Fantasy VII. And I felt they deserve my money. I feel I stole from them playing it on Game Pass. And so yes, I bought it again for Steam.
I think they deserve the money for sure. Are we going to give our rating for it?
Yes, we're gonna give our rating for it. I just want to say one big shout out, like, character of the goddamn year is SK, right? Can we all agree on that? Like, how cool was SK
I would
as a
drink with
character?
SK.
Yeah, filled
I
with
agree with
wine.
SK.
Right? I loved SK as a character. 10
I
out
will
of
get
10
an
for
SK
SK.
plushie.
Yes, as soon as they become available. So I see Makers on mute. So no worries, we won't get his number rating. But we all know he loved SK. Houston, what do you give the game out of 10?
As if it wasn't for the scaling deal, the game would be a 10 out of 10 for me. But the scaling part on it, it takes a little hit, so it gets a 9 out of 10 from me, just because of the scaling part.
There we go. And Simply Pwned Gaming, what would you give it?
Uh, he just took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly why it's a 9 out of 10. It would have been a 10 out of 10 for me if it wasn't such a arduous trek to get all the context at the end. Um, I think that this game will be nominated for Game of the Year. Will it win? I don't know, but it's a 9 out of 10 for me, and I think it gets the nom.
I agree. It'll definitely get the nom. And if it was last year, there'd be no competition. But they had DLC up last year as an actual game. But this year, I mean, you got Death Stranding, you got Ghost of Yotai, you got KCD2, you got a lot of heavy hitters we didn't have last year. So, it's gonna be tough. But hey, I think a passion project with a new way of playing video games, reimagined, those titles that always break ground on something new tend to win, like a Baldur's Gate 3. So I do have faith, and I'm gonna put my my words behind it. I think this one's gonna win Game of the Year, and I will say, I won't take a full point off for scaling. Because I understand to one extent where they're like, okay, for people who just want to finish it and get the story done, there's an easy path to do it. So I'm gonna give it a 9.5. Not everything can be perfect, and there was no photo mode, but I'm sure that'll come in a later update. So there it is. Scores across the board. Definitely a title worth checking out. But yeah,
What one more thing, Rue, too,
go for it.
is this just goes to show you can make a great game without leaning towards any of the sexism side, like the clad outfits, this hanging out, pandering to any side of the spectrum, whichever way you want to take that. And it just goes to show you don't have to have that stuff to make a great game. It just has to be the passion of the people behind it and making the game.
Yeah. If gamers are making a game that they love because they want to see it out there, I think that's a great place to start. And I absolutely think creating a new genre, like I'm going to call this an FRPG, is a great way to win Game of the Year. So shout out to Clair Obscure Exhibition 33, which in English, Nads has told me, means clear, obscure. So it's very just plain out there. But very cool stuff. That's gonna oh, Maker, give me your score out of 10. I see you switched to mute.
Yeah, I'd give it a 9. I definitely think it's a Game of the Year contender. But at the same time, I also think it's gonna be a tough year.
Absolutely. All right, 999.5. And that's what we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Everyone who's hanged out with us, link to the Discord in the chat if you're watching the VOD. Otherwise, take care, be kind out there, and we'll see you on the next game we all like.